Okay, we're back, we're live, we're here. Today is Tuesday. It's the 3 to 4 block. We have Cindy Goldstein with us. This is an interesting topic. She is with DuPont Pioneer. She's the Industry Relations Manager. She's also a super PhD in
plant physiology and molecular biology.
What could be funner?
Which means plant science.
What could be funner? I wish I had that. Where'd you take that degree?
University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and I did my bachelor's and master's at Oregon State University, where a number of our local folks go to school. Great ag program.
And you've been here in Hawaii for about 100 years now.
Or at least 20.
Okay, well that's right.
In fact, I just reached my 20-year milestone anniversary. How about that?
Okay. And the last time we had a show together, it was about beer. Do you remember that?
Always a good topic, Jay. It's using science and my enjoyment of cooking all
That's
together.
right. So Cindy can make beer. This is really an attractive thing.
Yes, all kinds of different homebrew.
So anyway, today I named the show The Science of GMOs, because I'm going to get right to the point.
Yes.
You're the lady. DuPont Pioneer is involved in GMOs, and you can speak for them and with them about them and educate us, because I think we need to be educated about this. There's so much cacophony out there now. I am so happy you're here, Cindy. No kidding.
Well, and thank you for the opportunity, Jay. You know, whenever we have something that's a topic related to science that's a little bit technical, it's very difficult for people to know what information to believe, what to kind of know about the topic to try to have a deeper understanding. So I like to start by just telling people that genetic engineering is something where a gene is taken from an organism, could be a plant, a bacteria, a virus, and it's put into another organism. And that seems very straightforward. But then we have a number of people that are uncomfortable with that idea. And we have people that think it's a great technology and something that we use every day in our lives. Do you know how insulin's made that most people use today? Most of the insulin that diabetics are using is genetically engineered. It's a human gene, or in the past a pig gene, put in a bacteria. So now you have a human gene or an animal gene put in a bacteria to make insulin. And
you get better. That's the only way you can make it.
You can go to a slaughterhouse, you can get the pancreas of a pig and isolate that insulin, and that's what used to be done. Yeah,
but now it's what's the word? It's created in this systematic way.
Yeah.
And it's better. It's better quality.
It's better quality, it's pure, it's a genetically engineered product. So, you know, as I puzzle over this over the years, people are very comfortable, seemingly, with that concept. But if we were to do something like that in a plant, people are quite uncomfortable with the idea of moving a gene from a human being or an animal. And in fact, none of our companies are putting animal or human genes into plants.
You know, we had Dennis Gonsalves. You must know him very well.
Yeah, he's done
brilliant
terrific
career.
work.
Spent most of his time in Cornell, and then came out here and solved the ring spot virus on papayas, saved papaya for the islands. And it's an export crop, and I think we should be particularly sensitive about export crops, because they actually, you know, give the world something from Hawaii. We want to do that. We want to export what we can. So can we talk a little about, you know, what happened in the papaya and why that's important to understand?
So that was a milestone for a number of reasons. It was proof of concept that you can take a gene from a plant virus, put it into a plant, and have resistance to the virus. It was also something that was done in the public sector. Much of what you see in the marketplace for genetically engineered crops are done by seed companies, not done in the public sector. And this was something where U.S. Department of Agriculture was involved, Cornell, University of Hawaii, and then one of the seed companies did donate technology that was used. It's also the only genetically engineered fruit that you can find in the marketplace currently. Now, there is a genetically engineered apple that won't brown It's got an enzyme in it to delay or prevent browning, but that's not something that we've seen in the marketplace to any extent.
So the notion in the papaya is he wanted to take a papaya that was resistant to the ring spot virus and take the gene that helped it be resistant and put that in all the papayas so that all the papayas are now resistant.
But they weren't able to find that. So plant breeders will look to see, is there anything in Hawaii, is there anything in some other tropical area where papaya grows, to try to find plants that were resistant to the disease. And they were in fact not able to find that, because that's what you do with traditional plant breeding. So they actually took a gene from the papaya ring spot virus and put that into the papaya.
Which nullified the virus in the papaya.
That's right, that's right. And so, you know, people were eating that DNA already. So think about this. You eat a papaya that has ring spot virus. Well, you're eating that viral DNA when you're eating the papaya with the virus.
New,
We've consumed that for quite some time. Would we know that? No, it's part of the, you know, when you're eating the papaya, you may encounter that. So that was one of the things in terms of looking at that technology, and would there be something about that if somebody were to consume it that would be very different? And we know that people prior to that had eaten that DNA.
Yeah, and had no effect. I mean, in fact, it never has an effect, does it?
That's right. DNA is DNA. Your body has the same DNA as a chicken or a toad or a fish, and we like to think of ourselves as higher beings, but in fact the reason why the genetic engineering technology works so well is the basic code of DNA is the same, whether it's a microorganism or a mushroom or you or me.
So it was very successful for the papaya. It saved the papaya crop. I mean, to the extent that we can export Hawaii papaya to the world, we can continue to do that now. You know, the papaya without this modification is at great risk. And I mean, I think it saved a sector of the economy.
It did. What we saw was that the virus began reaching epidemic proportions, especially on Hawaii Island. And you know, banana bunchy top is somewhat similar, where we don't have resistance, can't find resistance. And what is your alternative as a farmer? To take out that crop and plant something else. And if you're a papaya farmer and you're hit with this virus, that's not a very good thing to be told. Well, you're going to have to find something else to grow, in fact. So it really did save the papaya industry, which got hit very heavily in the 1990s on Hawaii Island. And we even had that here on Oahu and in parts of Maui where the virus is found.
Yeah. Okay. Now run a parallel on DuPont Pioneer, and it's what, growing corn seed?
We do corn, soybean, sunflower, and work with a small amount of sorghum. And our primary crop, though, as you mentioned, is corn seed. And we're doing research and development, which for us is plant breeding and seed multiplication.
So you are actually giving farmers all over the world seeds that they can use to plant crops.
That's right.
And your seeds, those crops, are going to have the advantage because you have made the characteristics better than they would be without the modification.
So that's the goal of our plant breeding programs, is to increase yield so that when a farmer, whatever country they live in, whether they're growing on, you know, 1/3 of an acre or 500 acres, that the seed that they plant will give them high yields. And how do we do that? With insect resistance, disease resistance, drought tolerance, and also to help farmers do things like reduce the amount of nitrogen that might be needed, so more nitrogen use efficiency. Now, not all of those characteristics are genetically engineered, and not all the crops we work with are genetically engineered. We have both types.
Okay. Well, so just to get the scope of it, though, you are generating seeds for these various crops to send them everywhere in the world. It's a global corporation.
It is, and the work that we do here involves producing seed in Hawaii that is sent to other Pioneer locations.
And then grown there.
Yes, where they do further work with them. And then our corn hybrids are actually developed in the location where they're going to be sold. So some state in the US or a country around the world. So seed from Hawaii then results in seed that's sold to a farmer, but they do that final step of the breeding work in the country or the part of the US where that's going to be sold.
Okay, so there's really 2 steps. Then it goes to the farmer.
Yes.
So this I get the sense, and this, you know, we studied the creation of some seafoods, shrimp broodstock, if you're familiar with that. Yeah. And the notion was that given the you know, environmental benefits, the weather, the ocean, the soil, whatever it is, the shrimp broodstock that's grown Mackay Range is like the best in the world. And so when we export the shrimp broodstock from Mackay Range, and the companies that are involved in that, it's worldwide value. I mean, everybody wants it, and it yields the best shrimp crops wherever it's used. So is there a parallel running now on the DuPont Pioneer seeds that you're sending out of Hawaii?
Well, certainly Hawaii is a very good location for us to do this work because of the climate. It's not too hot and it's not too cold. And so any time of the year we could be planting, pollinating, harvesting, and it not being too hot and not being too cold means that we get very good pollination here, high pollination rates. And then corn, we talk about heat units. What does that mean to you and me? It just means that the climate's really good to get good corn production, very steady growth. And our corn crop is about a 90 to 100 days, so about every about a 3-month time period.
So does that mean you can generate more of it in the course of a year?
Sure. When you think about our plant breeding programs, if you're in Iowa or somewhere on the mainland, you would only get 1 crop a year. Whereas here we can conceivably get 3 crops a year. And think if you're bringing a new product to market, how much more quickly you can get that new product to market.
So is the you're merely taking an existing technology, is this right? Tell me, is an existing technology and making the seed to go to the second stage seed place elsewhere, or are you designing new seeds right here?
So we're doing a little bit of both. So the actual step of inserting the gene, doing the genetic engineering step, is done on the mainland. And then the materials that come here are very early generation material. And then we do hands-on plant breeding, which means you're pollinating, making combinations, tracking that seed and tracking the characteristics. So some of what we are doing here is crossing a plant, let's say, that has traditionally high yield and good resistance with a line now that has a gene from genetic engineering, let's say for insect resistance. So we're doing the plant breeding work to have the genes move into varieties that we're working with, or the inbred lines that we're working with. And then with soybeans, it's the same sort of thing. The materials are, the genetic engineering step is done on the mainland, but then we do a lot of the grow out work and the pollination work here.
You know, in the case of the shrimp broodstock, it deteriorates. That's maybe not be the right word, but you have to keep on shipping it because the original quality of the broodstock is lost when it's put into agriculture, and you keep on putting new generations of broodstock in to maintain the quality. Is it the same thing with plants?
You know, I look at it more as the farmer using available technology, just like we get excited when a new gadget comes along that has new features. So there was nothing wrong with your last mobile device that you had, but ooh, look, the new one takes better pictures.
I know how that works.
Look, yeah. So you know, and as we seek that sort of technology for ourselves, maybe for business or convenience, for a farmer, this is a business person who is looking for ways to have higher yield. But it's not just the yield, Jay. You also, let's say you're a soybean farmer. Are you going to grow a soybean that's going to be made to make soy milk? Is it going to turn into soybean that you're going to feed to animals, so that when they eat that, they convert the protein in the soybean to meat protein more efficiently? Or maybe, in fact, it's a healthier cooking oil, and you're going to select a soybean line that has genetic characteristics for being a healthier cooking oil with no trans fats. So the farmer is always looking for that niche, that
he's trying
market.
to make a buck. He's trying to make a good product.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to make a living, and he needs the best, material he can get his hands on.
Sure. So it's always about yield, but then it's about what is that end use going to be for the farmer, and then he or she will look in a seed catalog and say, we're going to grow this kind of soybean because we're going to get a premium if we do it because it has this particular characteristic.
So if I look in a modern day catalog, say a catalog from DuPont Pioneer, I will see lots of different kinds of seed.
That's right.
And it'll be the same, the same product, same crop, the same kind of plant, but there'll be different kinds of modified
have different
plants.
Characteristics, and you'll want something for your part of the country. So here you'd want something that is tropically adapted for our day lengths, that has good disease resistance and characteristics for the tropics.
Okay, Cindy, I want to get into what's been happening in Kauai. I know that people are interested in that, and I am too.
Yeah.
But first, I want to take a break. We're going to take a little identification break. This is ThinkTech Talks, Tuesday at 3 to 4 block. We're talking about the science of GMOs with Cindy Goldstein of DuPont Pioneer. She's the Industry Relations Manager for DuPont Pioneer. We'll be right back after this break.
I'm Bill Spencer, President of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association. We do monthly luncheon programs with ThinkTech about things that matter to Hawaii entrepreneurs, investors, and business service providers. So join us on the fourth Thursday of every month at the Plaza Club. For information about upcoming events or to join our mailing list, visit hvca.org. See you there.
We're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell. This is ThinkTech Talks. Are here broadcasting on Ustream, on Spreaker, ultimately on YouTube and Olelo 54. And we are lucky enough, honored enough to have Cindy Goldstein. Make that Dr. Cindy Goldstein.
Yes.
Do this right. From DuPont Pioneer, Industry Relations Manager. We're talking today about the science of GMOs. And as we left it before the break a moment ago, we're going to move on to the issue of what makes people concerned. People are obviously concerned in Hawaii. There's so much noise and press about it. I'm afraid I don't follow it close enough to know what they're concerned about, but maybe you can help us with that.
I think we should take a step back and just look overall in society these days, where people don't always trust technology. They don't trust companies, especially companies that are large and have a global presence, to be looking out for the best interests of the people of a particular location, or to look out for society overall. And I think the other thing that we see is whenever the word genetics and genetic engineering comes up, I think it conjures up in people's minds types of concerns, some of which are
science fiction
concerns, and some are
Halloween movie concerns.
But I don't want to also discount that people genuinely are concerned about their health and their safety, and they're hearing so many things that if I didn't know about this technology, I would be so frightened and so worried, especially if I had children and wanted to know, should I feed this food to my children? And I think part of it is there's such an emotional component of this now that has come from a type of fear. It's beyond just a concern, it's an actual fear. And I think some of that comes from purposeful misinformation, and some of it comes from people that genuinely are trying to educate themselves and aren't finding good sources of information. So, part of what I'd like to convey is that there are places where you can find good third-party information. There's a website with a group called BioFortified That's one word.
Bio-fortified.
So
okay.
BIO, fortified. There's also the Genetic Literacy Project. And there's another one that's industry sponsored, but a good place to get information, GMO Answers. And then right here in Hawaii, there's HCIA Online. That's HCIA Online is a good place to find
what does
information.
HCIA stand for?
That's our Seed Industry Association, the Hawaii Crop Improvement Association.
Okay. Oh, yes.
So, you know, we always want people to find balanced information. And I think a lot of this does stem from hearing things that make people a little leery and concerned. But specifically focusing on Kauai, something
Wait,
happened.
before you go there,
sure.
before you go to Kauai, something you said I wanted to digress for a moment on, and that is that there are people who intentionally provide misinformation. Now, I'm just wondering if there's some sort of national or international movement that just doesn't like GMOs and wants to bring them down wherever they are found, stamp them out, those people are taking their steps by all means. I mean, is that true? Are there people, organizations out there just don't like GMOs and are funded in order to bring them down? Is this possible?
It's true. There are organizations that is the mission of the organization. There's a national organization, Center for Food Safety, out of Washington, D.C., and that is one of their stated goals. And if you go to their website, they clearly are trying to have no presence of GE crops anywhere in the U.S. and frankly, not any presence in the world. There are national organizations and international organizations where this is part of the mission.
What is their, what is their reasoning?
I think it's a distrust of large companies. I think it's a distrust of the technology. And I think probably you've been in the world of technology long enough to know about the precautionary principle.
Yes.
And there's this
Tell them what it
philosophy that if something has the potential to be unsafe, that we shouldn't be exploring that technology further and implementing it until we can assure the safety.
We have to prove the negative.
You have to prove that it's not going to do harm. And therefore, we should not be riding bicycles on our streets in Honolulu. I think it's a great idea to ride bicycles on the streets of Honolulu. But if you look at the precautionary principle, think, what could be more unsafe than trying to negotiate riding your bicycle between here and the UH campus.
Now, this easily translates into anti-progress. We don't do science in things which might harm anybody. We don't look at it. We turn our backs on it. It sounds like that's part of the group you're talking about. Is it religious?
There are people that, on religious grounds, don't think humans have the right to be tampering with genes, and that even came into the tarot discussion.
Yes, I
about
remember.
The cultural and spiritual significance of kalo, and whether it's appropriate or inappropriate to be working with kalo based on its significance in the creation history of the Hawaiian people. But you also have people that are just fundamentally concerned about technology and how it's used, and I would say that we should question. We should look into these things. But genetically engineered crops, before they came to the marketplace in 1996, were well studied and well scrutinized. And since that time, every genetically engineered crop that enters the marketplace has undergone an evaluation for the safety, as a food ingredient, but also just fundamentally being able to grow that crop and plant it has oversight by federal agencies, USDA and EPA in some cases.
So it's, well, okay, what agencies again? USDA,
Department of Agriculture has oversight of the field plantings, the field tests, and then EPA has oversight of any sort of plant like the papaya that has a gene in it that would have an impact on pests, like insect pests.
So that's impact on the environment.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to sort of get out of the way before we went to Kauai is the definitional thing.
Okay.
You told me before that there are GEs, I don't even know what that is. GMOs, well, we know that means genetically modified organism. And then the third kind was GE beyond genetically engineered crops. So GE is genetically engineered. What does that mean? And how is it different from GMO?
So genetically engineered is something that would be done in a laboratory where you take a little snippet of DNA that you've cut out of an organism and you insert it into the chromosomes of another organism. So you're taking a gene, we could take a gene from rice and put it back into rice or put it into corn, but we could also be taking a gene from a bacteria or a virus, which would be a different organism completely, and this would not occur in nature. You could not have a rice plant pollinating a potato and then moving its DNA in. So this is something that involves laboratory methods. Now, GMO, or genetically modified organism, is the term that we hear used in the media, that we hear used in common discussion. I'm a plant breeder. As a plant breeder, a genetically modified organism to me means something that humans have had some impact on creating or impacting the genetic pathway. So when a farmer, and our early agriculturists were women, would find the rice plant that looks healthier and more vigorous than the other rice plants around it, you would save those seeds and replant them.
That's Mendelian genetics?
And that's just visually selecting through Mendelian genetics that you see something that is growing better. Why did it grow better? Probably had a gene that gave it some characteristic, like a disease resistance perhaps.
Yeah.
So humans, our fish ponds, you know, here in Hawaii, you select the best fish for breeding, you select the best animals for breeding. You're genetically modifying that population over decades by doing that. So as a plant breeder, that's what genetic modification means to me. And some of the opponents of genetic engineering technology get mad when we say, well, that's really what a GMO is. But technically, I'm a plant geneticist. That's what it means.
You're a scientist, so you can speak on this.
Yeah, so the term that I use usually is genetically engineered to distinguish that.
Yeah, okay.
And then when I talked about other organisms, you know, we have, as I mentioned, bacteria that are genetically engineered to make something like insulin, and that's used, bacteria are genetically engineered to make a number of types of products. So that is another application of genetic engineering, and there are other types of genetically engineered organisms beyond plants.
So the notion of putting, say, a gene from, say, a bacterium with a gene from a corn seed. There's nothing unusual about that. That's not going to result in something out of Halloween or a bad science fiction movie.
Yeah.
Is there any event that has ever happened where that kind of thing has emerged and surprised everybody?
It's not that there's something that would emerge that's surprising, but we do need to manage these knowing the other sorts of principles of plant breeding. So if you're going to put insect resistance into corn plants by taking a gene from bacteria, you don't want to put so much pressure on the insect to evolve resistance to the gene that you put in that your technology essentially hasn't given you a gain. So in fact, one of the things that is required is that if you're planting genetically engineered corn with insect resistance, a percentage of your seed cannot have that gene in it, so that they're still susceptible to that insect, so you don't put too much pressure on it to mutate.
I'm trying to think. The guy's name was Jeff Bloom. He's an actor, and there was a movie called The Fly.
Oh yes.
And he turned into a big fly.
Yes.
Is that possible?
If you happen to gobble up a fly as you're, driving along, walking along, or something, you are not going to turn into a fly because you consumed its DNA, nor are you going to turn into something from eating the DNA of a genetically engineered corn. So DNA is DNA.
Okay. It's really tiny.
And it's very small.
That's Cindy Goldstein. She's the Industry Relations Manager for DuPont Pioneer. We're here on ThinkTech Talks. I'm Jay Fidell. We'll be right back after this break to talk more about the science of GMOs, and we will get to the subject of exactly what's happening in Kauai. We'll be right back.
Aloha. I'm Nicole Hori for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Hori. Mahalo.
We're back. We're live. This is ThinkTech Talks. I'm Jay Fidell. I'm here with Cindy Goldstein, DuPont Pioneer Industry Relations Manager. We're talking about the science of GMOs. And as we left it, the question to be discussed is, what's going on in Kauai, Cindy?
Well, on Kauai, we had a bill that came out at the end of June. That's been consuming a lot of time of the county council and the mayor and his administration. And something that is new and different that we are now seeing is tying the use of pesticides to genetically engineered crops. And I'd like to just state very clearly that genetically engineered crops do not require chemicals to grow. The only chemical that any plant needs to grow are the same chemicals we need. Those are called nutrients. We need calcium, we need zinc, we need manganese, and so do plants. So those are the chemicals they need to grow. But beyond that, no plant requires chemicals to grow. And what has happened in this discussion on Kauai is now...
It sounds pretty perverse to say that a plant requires pesticides to grow. That's perverse.
No plant requires pesticides. Yeah, okay. Even if you have the resistance gene for an herbicide, it does not require the herbicide to grow. And if you never apply the herbicide, it has no impact in any way that you would see. Okay. So what we've seen on Kauai is two things in Bill 2491. It started with a moratorium.
What did the bill say?
It started with a moratorium on genetically engineered crops, where the county would establish a permitting system that then would be a permitting system. There would be an environmental impact statement done, developing a permitting system, then the county would administer the permits to be able to grow the GE crops. The second part of that bill called for different things related to pesticide use, disclosure of use, buffer zones where pesticides would not be used, and other sorts of more specific to pesticide use. The outcome of the bill that passed was that the moratorium on growing genetically engineered crops is not in the final bill. However, what is in the final bill is a lot of regulations around pesticide use. And our position on this is that the federal government already registers and has oversight of pesticides that are used, and there are labels that are followed, and the state of Hawaii has a role in that as well. And it's the same with the genetically engineered crops. As I mentioned, we have federal agencies that have oversight, and the state has a role as well.
What's the point of having a county bill then? It seems to me that this is really not that you have a bill like this, and we all ought to recognize what it really is, and that is it's an attempt to stop GMOs. It had nothing to do with limiting pesticides or providing regulations on the county level. This is just another way to stop GMOs. And I remember back in the middle 2000s, there were 20, 30 bills like that every year put into the legislature, and they were all inappropriate. And I don't think many, if any, got passed, but it was all in the same vein.
That's right, and we see the same thing now, Jay, on Hawaii Island. In fact, today there is a hearing where the Hawaii Island County Council is taking up Bill 113, which would place a moratorium on being able to grow any new genetically engineered crops. Now let's look at an example of that. There's a dairy farmer that's growing genetically engineered corn. And if he were not able to, that farm would be importing corn to feed the cows.
More expensive.
more expensive, and it would be the same thing that they're growing. They just wouldn't be able to grow what any other farmer on the mainland could grow. But getting back to Kauai, I think you really hit it on the head. It is meant, if you look at the way the language reads, to put a moratorium for a time period on growing the crops, then make it very burdensome to be able to grow the crops. And not only that, there is legal liability. And in fact, the current bill actually has, the bill from Kauai, has in it some penalties, some civil liabilities, fines, potential jail time for an infraction.
You know,
and so it makes it very burdensome and difficult to be able to carry out our work, doing the best job we can with that, and with definitions in the bill that are quite unclear.
Yeah. Well, this is a real problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in the middle 2000s, there was all these bills, and it was all kind of, you know, extremism, and it went away. I thought it went away. I thought it went away.
Yeah.
By 2008 or so, I thought it went away, but it didn't go away. It came back. Now, with a vengeance, all these people, what exactly motivates them all around the state? There's never been a case where anybody's been hurt. That's right.
Yeah, nobody's become ill from eating these crops. We haven't had any situation where they're, even in Europe, where there's been long-standing concern, their ministries of health and science have said these crops are safe to grow and consume, and the ingredients are safe in food products. It isn't a health and safety issue. But I do want to make sure, you know, I'm very clear in saying we care about the health and safety of the community. There is a perception that there is a health impact to the community, which isn't founded on data or any sort of information that would suggest there's anything to substantiate that. And in fact, there's water testing that's been done, there's air testing that's been done to show just the opposite, that pesticide presence is not at a level that there is any health or safety impact. And people get concerned when they see a number greater than 0. And it is very difficult to explain risk, and that there is a number of 3 parts per trillion, and an allowable number is 100 parts per million, and then trying to explain, you know, what does this mean?
Yeah.
But the average person hears there's a number. Well, I'm concerned because it's not 0.
It's the precautionary principle again.
But we do want to acknowledge that the health and safety of the community is very important and something to certainly look at. But we're not seeing that any data points to that. The cancer registry, every year there's data presented on cancer incidents, and there was a claim that there were high rates of cancer on Kauai or in parts of Kauai. And in fact, the data does not show that. So then we see a shift in what is said, and well, it's not really a problem with cancer, it's a problem with, and then there's something else that's brought up. It might be some other sort of health implication. So what we see is a lot of concern amongst parents, amongst residents about, you know, is there something I should be worried about? That's part of why we have this bill, and part of why there are such strong emotions around it. And I don't know if everybody's aware, the mayor made a decision to then veto the bill that was passed. And that was something that was a surprise. It was a surprise to all of us in the companies that are impacted, as well as to others in the community.
What was his express reason, and do you think there was some other reason not expressed?
I think there were a couple of reasons. He certainly, Mayor Carvalho, born and raised in Kauai, much aloha for the community, for everybody on the island.
He's a very aloha guy.
He cares deeply, and from what I heard him say, that he was concerned about the county going into this, what sort of infrastructure would need to be set up, what sort of cost to the county to implement it, and the potential for a legal challenge against the county for focusing on companies that would then make it unconstitutional in some manner, that you're discriminating against a certain group of companies but not others, and also you know, the idea that the state and federal government already have oversight. And is it the responsibility, is it the kuleana of the county to do this, and at what cost to the county? And then I also think Mayor Carvalho, as many of us feel, this was so divisive in the community. We have the red shirts supporting the bill. We have the blue shirts that oppose the bill. And threats to the mayor, and threats
of physical violence.
Yes,
those threats. Yeah.
Yes, and threats to people that gave testimony.
Ooh.
With viewpoints in opposition.
Perverse.
And you know, this is in democracy. We all should feel very comfortable voicing our viewpoints and participating in the democratic process of giving testimony and sharing our thoughts and ideas. And there really isn't a place for threatening violence when you disagree with a position. And that's my personal viewpoint.
That would be my view too. Now, is there a parallel process going on the Big Island?
What is happening on the Big Island is that the bill that was originally proposed would have made it so these papaya farmers that we had talked about that were growing the GE papaya would no longer be able to plant it 30 months from now. That was taken out of the bill. So what they're allowing now in the current version is for entities that are already growing genetically engineered crops to be able to continue to do that, but they would have to register and pay $100. And we know that there have been incidents of crop destruction on the Big Island where genetically engineered papaya crops have been destroyed in a manner that looked like it was very purposeful.
You mean criminal destruction of,
yes.
of crops?
Yeah, that have fruit on them. Yes, and there's been more than one incident. So part of the concern with this is if you have to register and give the location of your farm, well, somebody that wants to then voice their opinion about your crop and go in and destroy your crops now have a, you know,
it almost seems like a unnatural causation.
Yeah. So there's concerns about that, and the bill would not allow what any other farmer in the U.S. that's a crop that's approved for commercial planting wouldn't allow a farmer on the Big Island to do that if they aren't already. And then there's also a moratorium on anything that would be considered something that is genetically engineered that is still in the research phase, unless it's in a level of containment that's a biosafety level that is, you know, very high levels of, it's a level 3 biosafety, which is
a very high level. Yeah,
it's you know, when you're working with an organism.
Use that for infectious diseases.
Yeah. So you know, it's to say that, you know, there are some anthuriums, there are some other crops that might fall under that category, including some research on genetically engineered papaya that's continued.
I'm saddened by this. I think it's a huge step backward. You know, it's anti-progress and it's irrational. And I wonder what's going to happen here. There are other companies too, right? It's not just DuPont Pioneer
That's right.
involved. Who else is involved?
So we have 5 seed companies in the state of Hawaii. Monsanto is not on the island of Kauai, but they're on other islands. And then we have Syngenta, BASF, Dow AgriSciences, and we have DuPont Pioneer. And then also impacted on Kauai is Kauai Coffee, because the way that bill was written, it was written to target users of pesticides of a certain category above a certain amount. It was meant to target our seed companies, and Kauai Coffee also fell within what those guidelines were that were set out to meet the criteria to have this bill apply to the business. So it targets 4 seed companies and Kauai Coffee.
Kauai Coffee is a local company, isn't it? A&B?
Well, they had been. Now they are owned by a firm other than A&B, but they're very much a local company, hire local, grow locally, packaged as a Kauai product, Kauai grown product. And if we want to support local agriculture, this is something that in no way supports local agriculture. And the other concern we have, frankly, Jay, is we have a legislative session we're about to embark upon in January.
Yeah.
We fully expect to see another labeling bill, but we also expect to see other bills related to pesticide use. And this is not just going to impact the seed companies, it's going to impact other farmers. We think the language will probably impact other farmers. And again, how are we supporting local agriculture if we're creating a scenario and a situation that makes it difficult for our local farmers to produce crops here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's scary for a local farmer, and it's completely inapposite to the stated policy of the state to support agriculture in general for the local farmers and everyone else. So this is a really bad ring about it. We're going to take a short break so I can recover from the sound of that. That's Cindy Goldstein, DuPont Pioneer, Industry Relations Manager, here on ThinkTech Talks with me, Jay Fidell, talking about the science of GMOs. We'll be right back after this break. Aloha, I'm Jay Fidell. This is ThinkTech Hawaii, broadcasting live from the Pioneer Plaza in downtown Honolulu. We raise public awareness about tech, energy, and globalism in Hawaii. Technology is critical to our state. A vibrant tech sector will give us new prospects in the global marketplace and will offer great careers and make our economy more resilient. Streaming live on Ustream and Spreaker, ThinkTech allows its hosts and guests invaluable opportunities to report important events and discuss important questions, and to be heard here in Hawaii and around the world. You can find links to our live streams on thinktechhawaii.com or on our mobile website, m.thinktechhawaii.com. And you can see our archive on YouTube. It's all just a click away. We want to do whatever we can to keep Hawaii relevant, connected, and thriving in the complexity of the 21st century. We hope you will help us in those efforts. Tune in today. This is ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidell. Mahalo. We're back. We're live. We're at ThinkTech Talks with Cindy Goldstein of DuPont Pioneer, Industry Relations Manager, talking about the science of GMOs. And where we left it before the break is, what is going to happen now? How do we know, what the public really thinks? Let me dwell on that for a minute. I just came back from the Rotary Club in Waikiki, the Honolulu Rotary Club, and one of the points I made to the crowd there is that, we get all confused, we lose our way, we forget our agenda, an agenda we agreed on in terms of importance to the community, value to the community, because the few people pop up and they pretend to represent everyone. And what we're missing is an academic, scientific survey of real public opinion. And that would be very beneficial, and I frankly think it would be very beneficial for the Crop Improvement Association and for dealing with this GMO issue, to find out what real people, the population in general, feels about it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we do see national surveys that are done. And when they ask people an open question, Jay, what are you concerned about with the food supply? Anything in particular? What do you think most people say? Food safety.
Yeah.
And then the next thing they're concerned about is calories and fats and sugars and is it healthy? Something like 2% or 1% will say, I'm concerned about genetically engineered foods and their safety. Then if you specifically ask questions in a national poll, you still find that a small percentage of people truly care to the point where they avoid buying those foods or shop at grocery stores purposefully to avoid buying those foods. And if somebody doesn't want to eat genetically engineered foods, they can buy organic, and we support all types of ag, and that's a way to avoid those foods. I think, as you know, it's in the question that you ask. So when you ask that open-ended question, what food concerns do you have about food safety, versus genetically engineered foods have been found to be maybe a little low in nutrition, which is not true, but the way it's posed has a lot to do with it. And I think you're right. To do a straight out poll asking unbiased questions, it would be interesting to see, and I bet the numbers in Hawaii would be a little higher in terms of people that may choose to avoid eating those foods.
Because it's on the newspaper all the time. It's one of those raw meat issues on the newspaper, and we all get churned up over that without knowing both sides of the case. I just wonder if it's in the wings that somebody should do a real poll on this and find out what people are really thinking, because I think it's distorted. It's distorted by the fact that the people who oppose this are well organized, using social media, whatever, and the newspaper is responsive to it because it's a raw meat story, like crime and automobile accidents and sports. It's a raw meat story.
Yeah.
And we really have to get balanced on it to find out what people really think. We have to find out what the science really is. We have to inform the public and then get feedback, honest feedback, about whether there is really community concern. But let me, and that's my thinking on it.
Sure.
But let me ask you this: if I took GMO and GE out of Hawaii agriculture, including the global companies you listed, but everyone. And I say you can't use it anymore. You can't do anything with it. We can stop progress in that area and just take it out of here. Clean up. Everything goes back to like subsistence or something. Organic. We do only organic in Hawaii. What happens economically? What happens, A, to the operation of these companies, to the sale of their seeds here and elsewhere, to global agriculture, but I think I'm more interested in local. And what happens to the economies of these islands? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, the seed industry is the largest ag sector in the state. We account for about 25% of the agricultural jobs, and they're high-paying, high-skill level jobs. We also do a lot to support broader agriculture through the sorts of technology we use in sharing that information, developing cover crops and conservation practices that we share. But in terms of broader impact, so you're talking about fully 1/4 of the ag sector perhaps going away with the higher paying jobs and, that come with that. And do our companies do seed other than genetically engineered seed? Yes, but a lot of the value of the work is in that material as our new products. So yes, there would be an impact, and then our papaya farmers would not be able to plant
the end
GE
of papaya, it would be, I think.
And there are, we do have some sweet corn that's grown in the state that's genetically engineered that could impact some sweet corn growers. But we don't have a lot of farmers growing GE crops. So in terms of more broadly, I think it has to do more with our companies bring in a lot of the fertilizer and the drip tape and the ag products. And it helps bring down the price for everybody in ag when you have larger volumes being brought into the state. So I think it could have a significant impact. Certainly,
like damaging the economy.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah, worry about that. Well, that's ThinkTech Talks with Cindy Goldstein, who is the Industry Relations Manager for DuPont Pioneer. We've been talking about the science of GMOs, and this is a subject which we all have to be educated upon. We all have to be part of the demographic that speaks to the issue. It affects or doesn't affect all of us, and we can't let just a handful of people turn the thing on its head. That's my view.
Well, and I appreciate the opportunity, and we do a lot of outreach and education. I had mentioned some websites people can go to, and I think one of the things that is a real challenge is it's easy to turn people out to be against something. But if you're just going out to hear some information, a lot of times, well, let's see, there's something on PBS I'd like to watch, and gee, my nephew's soccer game is this evening, and this whole thing of how we use our time. And I would encourage people to gather more information with viewpoints from both sides, and if there is an opportunity to come out to a forum that we're having with speakers. You mentioned Dr. Dennis Gonzalez. He's a great speaker. Sometimes we have folks who are farmers, papaya farmers that'll talk on these topics, and others to learn more about it and to get more of a balanced view. And we do find that while it seems like a lot of this is grassroots in Hawaii, and much of it is, there is a lot of money coming in from national and international organizations to support the GMO-free movements. And
you mean the anti-GMO movement?
That's right. So it appears grassroots, and much of it is, but there is a lot of money that we see that does come in from outside organizations, as well as strategic partnerships and help to help these organizations with their policies.
It's priorities. So if you're going to find a cause for yourself, find a cause that's really worthwhile. Why don't you find the cause of trying to build a technology industry in Hawaii, allow for good jobs, and you know, make our economy robust, and give us some diversification. So if you have time on your hands, that's how to spend it. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Jay. This was a great opportunity.
Aloha.
Aloha.